Jason, welcome to the show.
What's up, Dante?
Not much. Beautiful day, right?
Absolutely.
Beautiful day in paradise. Haven't seen you in a while, but as I go back, we've done a few things over the years, maybe the last 10 years or so, doing a few things live. It's always been amazing working with you. But if memory serves me correct, I think we met at one of the traditional sort of musicians jams back in the day.
Yeah, I think you had your piccolo bass there, if I remember.
I believe so. I sat in some piccolo, some lead bass. Yeah. Trying to do the Stanley Clarke thing. Yeah. One of my idols. Yeah. But in any event, I mean, you're a busy cat. You're everywhere, man. How do you keep it together, like with such a crazy schedule?
It's what I've always done. So, it just is what it is. You got the lean times that you go through. So somebody calls you for a gig, you make sure you're there. So,
right.
Just do what you got to do.
I understand. I probably don't have much time to do the jams anymore, right?
It's been a while. Yeah.
Yeah, cool, man. Well, take us back. Where did it all start for you? You're amazing on the sax, and you probably play a couple of other instruments possibly, but how was it introduced to you, and where were you at when it happened?
Like a lot of kids, I started playing a school band back in 4th grade, little band geek.
And where are you from originally?
Originally from Illinois, outside of Chicago.
Oh, nice.
Maybe about an hour out of the city. Just a really small town, 2,500 people. So that small town thing. But yeah, I started school band. I had a couple brothers that played a little bit in band, through high school. One that did a little bit of college, and we actually ended up in a kind of a rock band a little bit later on than that for a minute. But yeah, so just kind of went through the school band programs. Started playing in rock bands or whatever when I was in high school, and then from there went to college, got a degree in music, and just always played music full time.
Okay, where'd you go to school?
One of the smaller University of Wisconsin campuses, Parkside in Kenosha, Wisconsin.
Nice. And was it like music performance or where?
Yeah, just a straight up music performance degree. They were, when I was just getting ready to leave, they were starting a jazz studies major, so I didn't finish that. So it's just a straight up performance saxophone degree.
Okay. What do you think about people that do the performance as opposed to the education?
It's just a different path. I honestly, that was a heavy consideration for me, going into the education side of things, but it's not me. I think I would have been a good director, but I think I'm better when I do teach. I think I'm better one-on-one, just trying to fix little things as opposed to trying to handle a whole orchestra.
Sure. Do you have private students at this time?
Yeah, just a couple. Back in the day when I lived back in Wisconsin, I had as many as 35.
Okay, wow.
So I had a pretty big, stable of students or whatever. But now it's just, if someone wants to come to my house, my home studio, I'll do it that way. Okay,
and how do you go about selecting your students? In other words, everyone has perhaps a different method, and they put people through hoops. Some teachers do, as opposed to who has the most promise. Do you have something similar, or just sort of whoever shows up?
Whoever shows up, really, honestly, and just try to kind of assess where they're at and what their goals are. Different people have, I have an adult student, and it's like you're going to have different goals. It's like, I don't really need to, go back and play Mary Had a Little Lamb when they already have like a little bit of experience playing. And it's just kind of, it's like, well, where do you want to take this? What do you want to learn? Do you want to learn just how to read better? Do you want to learn how to improvise more contemporary music? Do you want to jump into jazz a little bit more and kind of understand chord changes and that kind of thing? So it just depends on where they're at, just try to assess what their level is and what their interests are.
Sure. Okay, so the teaching is still active, and you're incredibly busy. I'm surprised to know that you're doing the teaching because you're just everywhere with your playing. That's amazing. How do you keep it together as far as the organization of that? Do you do the booking yourself, or you have somebody doing it?
Most of the bookings I do myself. I have a regular Monday and Tuesday gig that I do that are through an agency, and I'll occasionally get some weddings and things like that through some coordinators and agencies. But as far as the majority of the gigs that I do, like the wineries and some of the other spots, that's just me booking that, and that's just all, honestly, it's just all word of mouth at this point. It's been a long time since I've really done any kind of hustling, hitting venues up and doing that. It's just a lot of word of mouth, which is good for me because like the whole marketing side of things is not my forte.
Oh, well,
You know?
we'd be amazed to hear that. Yeah, definitely everywhere, and kudos to you. That's amazing. I mean, you know, here's another thought. Every musician wants to be busy, but is it always the best thing to be busy? Is it okay to have some downtime?
Definitely. I mean, you have to. I mean, you know, it just gets to the point where sometimes it's tough to pick and choose. It's like, I mean, if someone wants you somewhere, it's like, yeah, I'm going to be really tired tomorrow, but it's hard to say no.
Right, right.
But yeah, it is important, and I mean, I think I'm getting a little bit better on that. Actually, coincidentally, I had a guy just send me an email on the way over here to meet you, and was interested in having me do an Easter brunch, and I'm going to have to email him back and decline because my wife and I are staying in wine country for the weekend. I have like 5 winery gigs in 3 days or whatever, so we're just going to stay there that night. And
okay,
just keep it simple. So
you have been smart enough to balance that work-life sort of thing. You know.
Try, yeah, do the best you can.
Awesome. What projects are you working on these days? I know you do a certain amount of recording every year. Anything in particular, something new that's coming up?
Nothing super active right now. I mean, I've played on a couple of other musicians' projects lately. Scott Carter, guitar player, he just released a CD. I played on a cut on that. There's another guy, Vance. He's going to be releasing a CD. I played on one cut, and we're talking about possibly playing on some other things. I do have some new material that I want to get to at a certain point, but it's just kind of on hold a little bit right now. My calendar's been nuts, and trying to work on my house too. So
absolutely, jack of all trades.
Just master of none.
Oh, I doubt that, my friend. What is it about people that you would want to put out there that might be considered something misunderstood? You know, with all of us, especially artists, being focused on, you know, success, is there anything particular about yourself that you think is sort of misunderstood that you want to clarify?
Yeah, maybe. I think I get pigeonholed a little bit into certain styles or whatever. I mean, like a lot of the gigs that I do, especially the winery stuff, I mean, it kind of calls for playing like some dance music and playing pop music and that kind of thing that people can gravitate to, you know. So it kind of, you have to sort of assess what your audience is and just kind of figure out what it is that you think that they would like. I mean, if I had my choice, you know, I would probably play a lot more jazz.
Okay.
But that's just not my reality at this point. So I think people pigeonhole me into like this smooth jazz, you know, just pop guy or something, and I like to think that I can kind of wear a lot of different hats and, you know, play different styles.
There's nothing
reasonably
wrong,
well, you know.
Nothing at all wrong with that, my friend. I believe that we should be, you know, diverse in our approach musically, even if we do focus in one particular area. Because I've seen you play all styles incredibly well at the highest level. You know, so nothing wrong with that. I try to, you know, do it all myself. But you know, jazz is my thing. But I try to do it all because sometimes people might call you for, you know, who knows what. And
you got to be ready. I mean, that's the key to having. I mean, that's one of the other keys to having a busy calendar, a busy schedule, is you have to be versatile. Yeah. You have to play a number of different styles. I mean, at the end of the day, music is music. I mean, it's like you can be a snob and say, well, I'm only going to play jazz. And it's like, you're missing the boat if you're going to do that. I mean, unless you're, you know, Herbie Hancock or, you know, or something like that. I mean, you know, even Herbie, I mean, you know, look at the Rocket and, you know, all that
He's a great example.
He's a great example of that. So, yeah.
And I looked at that, if people that have criticism about that, you know, it's okay of that bag just for a minute and to do something different because it exposes different generations to what you're doing. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Okay, so on the horizon of your busyness, which is, again, that's amazing, it's very commendable. There have been some legislative changes regarding daylight savings time. And very recently, I think as recently as yesterday, the U.S. Senate has approved a bill to make daylight savings time permanent. How do you see that affecting someone of yourself, very busy, not having to put the clock forward or backward?
I'm not super hip to what you're talking about, but I've always hated daylight savings time. I wish we could just lock it in and just, you know, actually, you know, so I would always kid with my mom. My mom grew up on a dairy farm, and I would always yell at her, you know, anytime. I'm like, Mom, stupid farmers, it's all your fault. She's like, we didn't want it.
Right.
So, you know, it's just kind of just a joke. But yeah, I've never been a fan of daylight savings time.
Okay.
So,
Okay. So it probably would be a beneficial thing to lock it in, perhaps.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Of course. Of course. Who are your heroes musically, if that's a correct phrase, or people that you looked up to on the sax, on the horn? Anyone in particular? Maybe give me your top 2 or 3 or 4.
Well, David Sanborn, of course. I mean, you know, he influenced just tons of saxophone players. He was probably the first guy that I really listened to where, you know, he really moved me and made me want to play and play at a higher level. You know, I mean, you know, since then, there's been a lot of other guys, you know, I mean, you know, guys like Michael Brecker, Bob Berg, Kenny Garrett, you know, some of those kind of guys that are a little bit more straight ahead / fusion, you know, where they've really got some meat to their playing. I mean, not that Sanborn doesn't, but I mean, the majority of his music has kind of been more in the, you know, kind of smooth jazz genre.
Not so edgy.
And, you know, yeah, not quite as. I hate to even say it because I mean, you know, I go back and I listen to some of that stuff, you know, some of the Sanborn stuff, and it's every bit as complex as somebody else. But it's just,
I agree. I agree.
The way that it's put out there is in more of an accessible kind of.
I think
format.
It's marketed to just a different base and a little bit more on the R&B side, perhaps.
Definitely.
Would you agree?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's good because however people are exposed to whatever your art is, if we're talking about jazz, I mean, what's wrong with that? They're getting there, and they're getting exposed to a different side of it.
Right.
Less of the fusion, more of the R&B, but it's still going to meet in the middle,
Yep.
and you're still in that category.
Yep.
What are you working on these days? In other words, what's coming up that's new and different, either venues or recording projects?
In terms of venues, I mean, the one thing that's been kind of a cool development is I actually have a group of R&B line dancers that are starting to follow me basically once a month, and the next one is actually this Sunday at South Coast Winery, and it's grown. It started at Felix's in Lake Elsinore, and it started with maybe 10 or 15, you know, ladies that came in and did like the R&B line dance stuff, and then it's consistently grown and grown and grown and grown to where the last one that we did at South Coast Winery, there was 350 people from all over Southern California, and this one this Sunday is actually going to be closer to 500 people, and there's a tour bus, there's a charter bus coming in from LA. They're coming up from San Diego. They're coming in from, I mean, just kind of all over Southern California, including, you know, so it's been a kind of an interesting thing. So it's like here, you know, I'm doing a solo sax gig, but it's like,
that's cool.
You know, it's like almost kind of bridging the gap between, you know, being a musician and being a DJ or whatever, which is kind of an interesting thing. I mean, you know, I typical musician, I mean, it's like you always have kind of an attitude about DJs. It's like, oh, live music, whatever. But I've come to, you know, being around like some weddings and things like that, I've come to appreciate what a good DJ actually brings to the table in terms of when, you know, the beat matching and keeping people on the dance floor, you know. You know, we've all worked with a ton of bands where it's like, you know, you end the song and then, you know,
it is engagement.
There's a minute of
engagement,
dead time, so everybody leaves the dance floor, you know, if that's what your goal is to get people on the dance floor. You know, a lot of times DJs are much better at it than musicians.
Sure, it's a different skill set.
So, yeah.
It's a different skill set, and a lot of us, and you know, at one point may have criticized the DJ, and I've mentioned this before, but I'll mirror it again.
Yeah.
There was a situation where I was in the teaching format, and one of the students was a DJ, and I had basically, you know, talking about reading music as a traditional, or writing music or transcription or whatever, and his pushback was, you know, okay, well, I don't do that. I'm a DJ, but it's not my fault. I didn't create the turntables, I just use them as a tool, and to your point, they have a different skill set that everybody probably can learn from to some extent. So, but being more of a solo artist, I mean literally solo, can you give us an example of a time where things didn't go right? Because it's all you then, right?
Yeah, I mean there's times where it's, I mean, you know, especially playing a bigger venue or whatever, where, I mean, it's pretty daunting. I mean, it's like, you know, and you do feel pretty naked up there. I mean, I started doing track gigs really all the way back into the early to mid 90s with a guitar player. So we'd have, you know, we'd have our backing tracks, but we were always a duo. And, you know, the one time that he called in sick, basically, and it was too, you know, I mean, really nobody else knew the thing. So it's like I really didn't have anybody that could sub that gig at that point. So I had to do the gig solo. I mean, the venue was cool with it, and it was a little nerve-wracking. I mean, just all of a sudden actually just being solo without even just one other guy was weird, you know. And it's, you know, since then, I mean, I've done a ton of solo gigs, so it's just a confident singer, or at least being able to fake confidence that, you know,
Sure.
you can, you know, kind of get away with it. But yeah, but you know, I mean, obviously, you know, in terms of the solo thing, I mean, you know, if you have a great band, I mean, that trumps a solo gig. You know,
Okay.
I mean, it trumps. But there are times when it's like you find yourself with a band, and it's like, this ain't happening. I wish I had my track. So, you know.
Ouch. I hope I wasn't on one of those gigs.
Not you, definitely not, definitely not. But I think you know what I'm talking
I
about.
I do. I've done a few of those. Never as a solo, but I've done some duo gigs like that. So I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Definitely to a certain extent. What criteria do you use when you are taking a gig? Let's say it is a band or an artist. What do you have any particular criteria? In other words, some cats it's like, well, it's got to be a certain dollar amount. Do you have that same philosophy or what?
I had a guy, great drummer in San Diego, Duncan Moore. He laid it out perfect for me. He says, you know, and I kind of use this criteria to this day. He said it's the 3 M's.
Okay.
Music, money, and mileage.
Okay.
And it's just a combination of those. So if it's maybe not a great paying gig, but it's right down the street, maybe you take it.
There you go.
You know, if it's super far away, well, now I got to get paid. You know, if the music isn't that great, I got to get paid.
Sure.
If the music is great, maybe I take less money to go do it. So, you know, it's just kind of it's a balancing act, trying to, you know, kind of sort through all that, you know.
Okay. Wonderful.
So.
Musically speaking, back in the late 90s, a friend of mine that's a DJ, she used to be a DJ on a smooth jazz station in Los Angeles, Pat Prescott.
Okay.
We hung out at a show by an alto sax player from Europe. His name was Praful. Are you familiar with Praful?
I remember, yeah.
Okay, so he did something similar to you, but it was a little bit more of on a global stage. Could you see yourself doing something like that, even if it was with tracks, but sort of globally?
In terms of just more of a touring situation,
exactly,
all of a sudden popping over to wherever.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know, and again, I think that comes down to, I mean, the money's got to be right, you know, because I mean, I'm not bragging, but I'm doing pretty well right here.
Yes.
So it's like, I mean, if the money was right, and you know, that, yeah, it'd be a great experience to be able to.
Okay, cool.
To be able to do that kind of thing.
Okay,
right?
Maybe something on the horizon then.
Yeah.
Okay, because I think what he did was, again, it was smooth jazz. It was very danceable and just sort of a nice hybrid right in between.
Yeah, I know he had some kind of, you know, DJ grooves and that kind of thing kind of happening. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Cool, man.
Have you heard anything about him recently?
Unfortunately, I have not.
Yeah, I think I heard him. It was like that brief window where
it was a one-hit wonder, as they say.
Yeah.
But you know what? Sometimes that's all it takes.
Yeah.
That's all it takes for some people. You have again done a lot of stuff, Jason, and just amazing on your craft. What would you say to a new, younger, up-and-coming sax player or any particular instrumentation, someone that wanted to get to where you are? Would you have any advice, any words of wisdom for them?
I think you got to listen a lot. I mean, you got to, you know, check out a number of different genres, different styles. Don't pigeonhole yourself into one, and you know, really kind of study the way. And not just saxophone players either. You know, study different instrumentalists and the way that they phrase. It's really important to kind of study singers.
Okay.
Because obviously that's, you know, that's the most natural instrument that we have is the voice. Whether you can sing well or not, I mean, it's, you know, that's easiest to kind of be able to project your voice. So what I will tell students is like, no matter what it is that you're playing, you know, just imagine that you're singing through the horn. If you're singing through the horn, that's going to be the closest extension to your own voice, which is what, you know,
that's what
it doesn't
they say.
matter what instrument you have, you're trying to make that instrument an extension of your own voice. And so you have to imagine that you're singing, and that's important in a number of different aspects in terms of just, you know, when you get into kind of the mechanics of things, the diaphragm, you know, support, proper embouchure, proper just voicing of all the notes. If you imagine that you're singing that note, it's just going to speak much more clearly. But then also from a phrasing standpoint, you know, so like I do a lot of pop music and stuff. So you listen to singers and try to play it. One of the comments that I'll get from people, just kind of a compliment, they'll say things like, you know, when you play, I don't miss the words, or I can hear the words when you play.
Beautiful.
You know, and I think that's the goal of what, you know, no matter what instrument you're playing, you're trying to make it as much of an extension of your voice as you possibly can.
Expressive, lyrical.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. What is the secret to your sound? In other words, as a bassist, it's the fingers. what would you say about, you know, your approach? In other words, I know there's some sax players have these amazing necks that are, you know, customized, or these custom mouthpieces and so forth. They've got the great Selmer sax. But would you say that there is something in particular other than just yourself?
I think the equipment is secondary to just the individual. I mean, it really is, in terms of, you know, just kind of getting back to what I just said, singing through the instrument. No matter where you are on the horn, no matter what it is that you're trying to play, you have to imagine that you're singing. Everything comes from there. I mean, like as a bass player, your tone comes, you know, from your fingers. I mean, that's a lot of it. I mean, obviously the equipment kind of helps, but if you don't have this together, none of the rest of that matters.
Sure.
You know, I don't. I mean, I have some nice horns. I mean, I have some endorsements. You know, I endorse Antigua wind saxophones, Drake mouthpieces, you know, D'Addario woodwinds reeds. You know, so all that helps, but it is, you know, I just feel like but you know, that said, okay, so the most important piece of equipment is going to be mouthpiece reed. You know, just that combination. That's the most important. So if you have something that you're comfortable with that way, you should be able to pick up almost any decently adjusted horn and still sound like you. You know, that's it. You know, that's not me saying that it's not important to have a good instrument, but all that is secondary to
it all works together.
Player. Yeah.
Beautiful. You do a show yourself called Lockdown Sessions. How did that get started? Was that sort of a product of the pandemic?
Exactly.
Okay, and tell us a little bit about that and where people can find that.
Okay. Well, right now I'm doing it every Wednesday, and it's on my YouTube channel. Wednesday, 5:30 to 7:30 California time.
Okay.
Which, with daylight savings time, I don't know what that's going to do. Anyway, on my YouTube channel, which is just youtube.com/Jason Weber Sax. So yeah, it is a product of, you know, of the lockdowns. We got about 2 weeks into this thing, you know, going back to March of 2020, and I was going stir crazy because, I mean, like, you know how busy I am, and I'm like, I never had any interest in doing like any kind of live streaming. I was like, my attitude at the time was like, this is stupid. Why would I do this? You know, if I do this, and why is anyone going to come to my gig? I mean, but so I started doing it. I mean, it took me kind of a week or so of kind of messing around with some equipment to get what I was going to be happy with under those circumstances. It was impossible to get a decent webcam at that time because everything was out of stock. But I kind of pieced some stuff together to be able to do it. And just I thought, you know what, I just need to try this. And it was initially just on Facebook, and it was a really pretty cool experience because, especially then, when everything was locked down, no one was going anywhere. It was literally people all over the world that were chiming in. You know, people from Saudi Arabia, Canada, Brazil. I mean, just kind of all over the world. And I felt a little bit stupid on them sometimes, where I would get down and I'm like, man, I'm not doing this tonight. And then someone would send me a message and say, thank you for doing what you do.
Oh, beautiful.
You know, I mean, just thank you for the gift of music or whatever. And I realized that it was bigger than me and bigger than whatever my attitudes were going to be about it, because it was helping people get through a difficult time. You know, that's not me bragging. That's people telling me that.
Those are the facts.
You know? So, I mean, I've tried to continue to do it. I mean, my calendar got really busy last year, and I stopped doing it for a month or two. And then, you know, things kind of opened up a little bit again to where like my Wednesdays were open. Because, you know, the gig that I had was more of a seasonal kind of thing. And so I've been doing it on Wednesdays, and it's not a huge audience, but it is still like this cool little international family of people. They listen and they comment, and, you know, and they're genuinely happy to be in that space for those couple hours. So, you know.
Awesome.
It's been an interesting thing.
Awesome. Well, Jason, thank you so much for coming, and we appreciate your time. And everybody, definitely check out Jason's channel for his YouTube streaming broadcast, and check him out when you can get to a city near what he's doing. So blessings to you,
Yeah, you
and thank you for coming.